And at this time, Dr. Little is going to take the floor. He's got a good bit tonight. We're going to turn it over to 11.0, which is our superintendent's report, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Little.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You can see we have quite the agenda tonight with the comprehensive financial report, as well as some other really big reports. I know Mr. Poole's here to talk about the College Center at Gilbert High School that we'll be walking through as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Salters in just a moment. But before I do that, I would like just to take a moment to congratulate Leah Sarantopoulos and Julie Painter. Leah Sarantopoulos was named the South Carolina Assistant Principal, the South Carolina Association of SCASA's Middle Level Assistant Principal of the Year. And then Julie Painter was the SCASA High School Assistant Principal of the Year. So once again, lots of great leadership. They are also both graduates of our Aspiring Principals Academy. So we're very excited about that, and just thrilled that our leaders continue to show out at the state level and do really great work. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Salters, and we'll start on our comprehensive annual financial report.
Thank you, Dr. Little. I'm going to turn it over to Matthew Hodges, our audit manager. Really appreciate Matthew being here this evening. And I'm going to get the podium, or Matthew, I guess you can grab that podium. We have a presentation for you tonight that highlights the annual financial report. You know, as Matthew's getting ready for the presentation, I would like to just take a moment and give thanks to the finance team that's here this evening, and really all of our principals and staff that are here. This audit highlights the quality and attention that is given to financial management in Lexington School District 1, and really appreciate everyone's efforts to get to this point. I know the finance staff has spent hours upon hours getting this CAFR ready, and so if they seem a little weary-eyed this evening, that's why I asked them to sit up front so they would stay awake. So, but really appreciate all the hard work and effort that they've put in with this, and thanks to Matthew and Burkett. Been a great team to work with to get this before you this evening. So, Matthew, I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate your time this evening and the opportunity to present the results of our audit. Provide a brief introduction, address our required audit communications, present just a brief summary of the financial statements, and answer any questions that you might have. So our team is Larry Montague is our audit partner in our West Columbia office, who reviewed and approved issuance of our reports, and I serve as audit manager for the firm. Again, we wanted to express our appreciation to the finance team, everyone who worked so hard in putting together this document, and all the employees of the finance office in the district for the cooperation that we received in our audit. Pleased to report we had no disagreements with management whatsoever in performing our audit. One item, the top item there, says there's no significant change in accounting policies during fiscal year 2019. And just one item I wanted to mention about that is that next year there will be a change in accounting policies that I'll be presenting to you in regards to fiduciary activities. That's your pupil activity funds. There's been a change in accounting principle that will be in effect for fiscal year 2020, and those will be presented in a separate section. Actually, this is probably the first time, and maybe the only time I ever get to say this, but the CAFR document may actually be getting smaller next year, because the pupil activity funds will be as part of special revenue funds, which provide condensed information. So just a heads up on that. That'll be for next year. We didn't have any consultations with any other independent accountants in performing our audit. There were no issues discussed prior to our retention as your independent auditors. And again, we received no difficulties and received full cooperation from your staff. So in performing our audit, we tested transactions based upon our knowledge of the district. We used professional judgment selecting samples, which were designed for reasonable but not absolute assurance, as we didn't test 100% of transactions. But we did not note any instances of non-compliance with district policies. All reports issued 3 clean opinions. First on your financial statements, secondly on internal controls, there were no deficiencies noted, and lastly, a clean opinion on compliance with regards to your federal awards. As we look at the district's financial health, you remain in excellent condition. Your AA bond rating with Standard & Poor's and the AA1 rating with Moody's was reaffirmed with your bond issue during fiscal 2019. You continue to have an assignment of fund balance based on your fiscal year 2020 budget appropriations, which shows looking forward in good financial health. And as far as your certificates of excellence in financial reporting, this is the 25th consecutive year that you've received this award from ASBO, and the 24th consecutive year of receiving this award from GFOA, which is a very high honor. They conduct a rigorous review of the CAFR document, and so management is certainly to be commended for receiving these awards. So ASBO is the Association of School Business Officials, and GFOA is a Government Finance Officers Association. As you well know, Lexington 1 is a growing district with an increase of 488 students during fiscal year 2019. One item that's not on my slide is that your student-teacher ratio did remain flat at about 14.5 students. So that's just one item. Even though there's growth, you're hiring teachers and able to keep that flat. The property growth, value growth increased 3.9% as well during the year. Yes? It is.
There have been some years where it's been flat and decline. I think
Right.
last year we jumped, so
It was on pace with last year. It was a little bit above 3% last year as well. Yep. So the general fund balance increased $5.6 million. That's the net number in fiscal year 2019. Of that, your revenues increased about $9 million. So that includes $1.3 million in local property tax revenues, $1.7 million from state EFA revenue increase, $2.8 million in state fringe, and I don't have it on my slide, but there was another $2.8 million in state revenues in lieu of taxes. The general fund expenditures increased $12.2 million. In that, there was a net increase in employees of 89. Salary increases to employees as well as increases in the employer required contributions for employee insurance and retirement premiums. That retirement premium rate increased by 1% again for fiscal year 2019. And the difference is in the transfers into the general fund. So the general fund balance was $57.5 million at June 30th. Of that, prepaid items represent $1.3 million. I mentioned the fund balance being assigned. There was $8.3 million that was assigned as part of the 2020 budget. And the unassigned balance was $48 million. That represents 18.4% of your general fund expenditures. Your district policy requires that at least 7% of the general fund balance, general fund budget, be held in fund balance, and that amount was $19.6 million. So you had $48 million that went towards that. Your total government fund balances were $183.8 million.
and then how is that general, if you go back a slide, that general fund balance at 18% of the total general fund, has that been constant year over year? Has it been holding?
It's an
around
increase this year. Last year it was about 16.6.
Okay, it seems higher
percent.
there, yeah.
Yes.
And what is the recommended GFAO level?
They like for it to be at about that 16.6 to 17, around there. So you're just a little bit above, but not out of the range. Okay.
But that's an appropriate level.
Absolutely, definitely. Okay. All right. So I know this is a little bit hard to see, but this is just a summarized version of the statement of net position for the government-wide financial statements. On the assets, you can see the current and other assets increased $64 million. That is largely due to the increase in the capital projects fund balance, which was because of the ban, the $85 million ban that was issued in April. That also increased your long-term liabilities by about $57 million. The capital assets themselves increased due to purchases from that ban during the year.
quick question.
Yes,
Go back. Yep. Capital assets, that's net of depreciation?
it is. It's net of depreciation.
Okay.
Then you have the pension liability. I don't know if are you gonna be talking about the pension and how?
I'll go ahead and talk about that. So that is an actuarial calculation. It's not a liability of the district. Same thing with the OPEB. It's the district's allocated portion based on evaluation done at the state level. That portion, the district's portion, is based on fiscal year 2018 contributions, required contributions to the pension. These were added, pension was added about 5 years ago. OPEB was added to the books last year. Was the first year that was presented. So those, again, you're not gonna have to write a check for $600 million, but that is your actuarially determined liability as recorded by Gatsby.
That's reassessed each year as the pension either matches or doesn't match growth projections.
That's correct. That's the actuarial valuation is done a year before, so that the audit on the pension and OPEB can be done, and then we come in a year later and use those numbers.
And then our long-term liabilities, I assume, are bonds?
Correct.
Okay.
It also includes compensated absences, employee leave. But
Gotcha.
yes. Okay. All right. And as we look at the overall revenues and expenses for the district, the operating grants are up $4.3 million, and property taxes up $3 million. State revenues, I mentioned earlier, up 3.5. So overall, an increase of just under $12 million for total revenues. Total expenses are up just under $24 million, and that again is about half of that is due to the general fund, the expenses I mentioned earlier, as well as the district share of the OPEB and pension expenses. Okay. All right.
I've learned to repeat things. Half of that 24 million, 12 million was because of the pension.
Right, it was about half. It was about half. It was 15, some were plus, some were minus, but that represents about 15 million, yeah. Okay. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Any other questions, board? Okay, Matthew, thank you, and thank you to Burkett, and I want to thank the finance department, and I also want to thank the principals and the teachers and our staff for being so financially astute and keeping this district where it needs to be financially. So let's give them a round of applause.
All right, thank you very much. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce tonight Ryan Poole. He has presented to you before, but before he talks to you, I just want to give you a little background. I don't want to step on your presentation. This has been I don't want to call it a labor of love, but it's really the only way I can describe it at the moment. We've been working on this project really since, I would say, the summer of 2016, Dr. Talley, I believe. And we have talked about this, and we've talked about it, and we've talked about it, and we've been partnering, and we've been trying to work with, find the right partner to make this a reality. And over the last 6 months, we've made a lot of progress on this. And I believe tonight we are making a recommendation for this thing to happen. So without further ado, there's some really cool stuff we're getting ready to look at. And Mr. Poole, talk to us a little bit about what we have going on at the College Center. Tell us more about the College Center at Gilbert High School.
Yes, sir. Dr. Little, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you again for allowing me to speak to you tonight. From previous presentations, you know I speak fast, so please stop me and ask any questions that you have. As Dr. Little said, this is an exciting venture, and since Dr. Little came on board around the same time that I did, we've been talking about college opportunities for our kids, and not just in terms of like tuition savings, but really college mindedness, and the idea that not everybody will go to a 2-year or 4-year college, but we're not going to make that choice for you. We're going to do everything we can to prepare each student to make that choice for his or herself about what their path is. And this is, we believe, opening one of those paths. So it directly relates to our strategic plan performance goal 2. The district will implement strategies to improve equity in high-level coursework with a strategic action step that looks for sort of non-traditional structures to get kids into higher level courses. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. What I'll be specifically presenting is a developed idea with your charge and blessing to move forward. We'll turn that into a plan that we can act on pretty quickly. So this is a well-developed idea. I will try not to go sort of too into the weeds. I know from project planning that what it will look like in August probably will be much better and different than what it looks like now in my head and on this screen. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions as we go. So when we think about how we design a school experience that sort of breaks the mold and disrupts the traditions that sort of advance some kids to college and others not to, we look at how we create a college and career and community experience that is going to respond to students who traditionally haven't gone on to a four-year school. We designed a proposal, a plan of this college center experience, and it really meets our four system commitments to propel students with the skills they need to be ready for the next level. And that means all kids can be ready for that next level, a two-year or four-year college, regardless of circumstances. We're going to be teaching different kind of skills that directly relate to what it means to be a college-bound student and a college student who makes it through that freshman year. We've got partners with USC Aiken who research with us and talk about what are the factors that cause students not to make it through their freshman year. And it's often not the academic preparation, it's these other pieces, these connections to our power skills. So we look at how our students benefit from partnerships like with USC Sumter or Midlands Tech or industry, and commitment 3 is about making sure that our system is partnering with families and communities to make the students' experience better, and that our students are giving back to their communities. So a big part of this college center is also this community aspect, both the internal community of the college center and what they do in relation to their partners and the community around them. Also, equipping students with the skills and resources they need. For students who haven't traditionally been on this path is not something that we can just hand a bunch of students over to some teachers and administrators and say, now make them college bound. So we've got to do things differently, and that means equipping the adults differently, and we're going to talk about that through some different partnerships. And I'm going to breathe for a second. Whew. So I go fast, and it's late, and this is past my bedtime already. So the College Center at Gilbert High School. So Gilbert has a space at the high school that is a beautiful, very college-feeling space. We also see students, and part of the culture at Gilbert High is really talking about possibility, and this was a really fertile ground for this opportunity. So we started talking with USC Sumter about what this would look like, and part of the, I'd say, opportunity has been that we aren't a geographic zone that has a college in our zones. So we had to think a little bit differently, but that's turned into really a good way to think about opportunities in a different way. So the College Center is, so think of the centers that we have at our other high schools. This one is a little bit more generalized. We look to open with a class of freshmen, hopefully in the fall of this coming year. Right now we have about a pool of about 780 students that we fall into eligible, and then we can weed that down to a group that looks more like our target group that's looking more like 130, that from those, given the choices that they would need to make to commit to this center, getting 25 to 30 we think is really feasible. I failed to introduce Shanita Chapman's here with me. She's one of our career specialists with the district. She has a background with higher education, and she's been helping me kind of think through these ideas, look at the target population. She'll be helping develop recruitment material, and she's been sort of invaluable as we think through this. So I wanted to introduce her to you guys. So the College Center will give students a high school diploma, but it will also give them really rich college experiences that overlap dual enrollment, AP, career exploration, internships, to give a sense of this belonging and to change a trajectory of a kid who might not otherwise find that place without certain kind of supports. So you're going to see a short video at the end of this with one of our partners that's really sort of captures far better who we're after more than I can. So hang on, and I think you'll enjoy that. One of the special pieces about the center is a partnership with AVID, which is a national group. I hope you guys have seen an article that came out with USA Today that shows how AVID students progress through college at like 45% versus their counterparts at around 11% success rate. But I can get that to you if you haven't seen it. So AVID will be a big part of what we do.
Go ahead and if you'll send that to Ms. Layton and she can get it out to the board, that would be great, Mr. Board.
Absolutely.
If I may, also, if you'll recall, Mr. Smith, Guy Smith from White Knoll Middle School, they talked about AVID on his presentation night, and Carolina Springs Middle School is also using AVID as a strategy to capture the same group of students in middle school.
Right, so Carolina Springs has our first cohort. We hope to have our second at White Knoll Middle this next year, and those kids might be perfect applicants for this program as well. So it really looks towards the kids in the academic middle, maybe first generation college students who maybe just don't right now believe that they're college-bound kids, and we do believe that they're college-bound kids, or at least we believe they deserve to have that choice. All right, now this is really into the weeds. So I'm gonna do some pointers. Like I said, in August, this may not look what it will look like right now, but it's a pretty good idea. So we don't want to exclude any students who haven't been in English 1 or Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, because that decision sometimes can get made very early on, but it doesn't necessarily reflect a student's aptitude. So in the summer of this year, we can provide an English 1 class to get a group of students ready. If you see here, so this would be the freshman year, the sophomore year, the junior year, and the senior year, so going out into spring 24. So that freshman year, we're gonna go ahead and embed an AVID class across the whole year, paired with an English 2 honors class. That will be specifically chosen with certain teachers who really demonstrate this mindset that yes, you can do this, yes, you will do this, we believe in you, and we're gonna give you the skills. And it's not gonna be easy for you, the kids, it's not gonna be easy for the parents, it's not gonna be easy for us, the teachers, but we're gonna achieve this goal. So that goes across the first 2 years, this English 2 honors, English 3 honors. You'll see we have a literacy component with English all through all 4 years. There's not much choice in this schedule, although there's some elective options and world language options. So students, this is not for everybody. Just like our kids in Accelerate or with some of our other centers, you have to make some choices. And we think there are a group of kids out there that this is for them. And it will provide the social and emotional support and the rigor. You see they start, and these are kids that are not necessarily identified right now as the future valedictorian of their classes, and we're going right into AP classes here in the freshman year with supports and honors classes to go with it. In the sophomore year, we continue, and you get into 2 more AP classes where those students are developing this college-mindedness with a cohort family feel and the social emotional support that comes with it. The junior year is where you really hit it heavy. So by then, we believe our students will have qualified with PSAT or SAT or ACT scores to take dual enrollment classes. They come in tuition free because of lottery tuition assistance, and they're almost exclusively in college at this point, but in that safe space in the Gilbert Center with their AVID teacher every afternoon to talk about what's working, what's not working, study strategies, tutorials with each other. From there, the senior year opens up a little bit. You still have that AVID support, but that shifts more to FAFSA and college visits and consolidated versus unconsolidated debt and what all that means, because you might not have a parent at home who's been through college or an older sister or brother who's done that. So we're gonna be giving that support going out to colleges, and that belonging and belief is a real part of their experience. By this point, we hope that they're saying, yeah, we get it, we're college bound, we're going, get off my back, but we're not gonna get off their back. You're still gonna take hard courses, you're still gonna get those credits, and you're gonna get out and start applying while you still have the safety of school with you, okay?
Mr. Poole, so I think I heard so in the sophomore year, they will be taking the standardized tests which qualify them for the state tuition program?
Well, it
Is
qualifies them for admission into USC Sumter.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But some of our students start taking that in 8th grade, 9th grade, so we're gonna be ensured that we've got them. And our dual enrollment has grown so significantly over the past few years. With our partnership with USC Sumter, that has not been a barrier for our kids. So we'll have some good ideas of if we need to be worried, starting in that freshman year.
But I guess what I'm saying is, so that's acceptance to USC Sumter, but then I think I heard also funding for the classes in the junior year is going to be driven?
Right, when you take
Yeah.
2 pairing dual enrollment classes, so if you have 2 in a row, you can go ahead and qualify for tuition assistance.
Okay.
The lottery tuition assistance, and those classes are paid for.
So that would flow, oh, okay. So instead of
Right.
the student having to pay for it?
Correct, no
Okay.
tuition.
Okay.
So the whole thing, they can come out with 24 hours at least of dual enrollment credits, and then tack on another 15 to 18 hours of college credit through AP, all tuition free. So they're gonna come out really with some good savings. I always say more than that savings, because I changed my major 5 times. It wouldn't have saved me much money because I kept changing my major, but I believed I was college bound. I believed I belonged there. I had been in enough college classes to say, yeah, I can do this. And if they believe it, that's sort of worth, all the effort, because that's the piece where our partnership with USC Aiken comes in and says, if they don't believe it, they're not gonna stay, right? So this is a draft. There's some flexibility in there, but again, this is a very select group of kids that we believe this is gonna get them not only through high school when they maybe haven't found a place otherwise, but it's gonna get them into college with the skills to find their place when they get there.
And the same 30 kids are going to be in these classes together. I mean, they will truly be together these 4 years.
So, yeah.
Or is it two flight? I mean,
Yeah,
two.
it'll be a little bit of a blend. So sometimes
Okay.
they'll be going out into Gilbert to go to world language classes. Maybe some want to take French, some want to take Spanish, some want to take German. So they go out. And some of the classes they would go out, especially for the higher rigor classes, because there isn't a choice and there is a cohort of 25 kids, we're going to do those together. So it kind of looks on the schedule like a singleton, and you build the schedule around that a little bit to make sure they can have those guaranteed experiences together. And then there are some classes where they'll go out.
And I would also say the 24 dual enrollment hours is truly really a minimum. We've been talking to USC Sumter about some other options that second semester senior year. There are some opportunities that when we talk about the Council of Higher Education, we think 24 is really the low end of the number that it will ultimately be. So we're excited about really where it can land is even more than the 24 and the 18 to 21. But we just wanted to make sure we could deliver what we were promising. And when we're advertising this, we're gonna deliver what we can promise. But we are confident that they'll have more than 24 dual enrollment hours before they leave high school.
And that will replace the AP classes. So-
Not necessarily.
so
It
it'll
may
be
be in addition to.
Okay.
I have a question. Presuming this is like one of the other centers where the students travel from wherever their home school is. Gilbert's an EL school, so will the EL environment cover this as well? Because that has a little bit of a different, a little bit of crew and things like that.
Yes, ma'am. So Gilbert right now has crew at the beginning of the day, so our students could get there to be a part of a crew either together or out with other students in Gilbert. That's going to be determined a lot in the planning with Mr. Nelson, who's somewhere here. Expeditionary learning is a big part of the learning culture at Gilbert. So these same teachers who are Gilbert teachers that will be teaching these classes are going to be bringing in things like protocols that are used regularly so that students learn to expect certain academic and instructional consistencies as part of their process. They're going to be learning that their learning is not just sort of academic preparation, but a part of their contribution to a better world. That's who Gilbert is, that's who EL is, it's who AVID is. So it all kind of blends together nicely. AVID provides structures like academic skills and mindset structures that allow students to be better EL students or better IB students or better. So it's sort of a platform that you use to be the best of whatever it is that you want to be as a school. So it's going to be application-based. That application, we have lots of examples from neighboring districts, from early colleges, which this is not an early college. This has a more unique flair where we get to do a lot more choices for ourselves in partnership with a higher ed. But it's application-based, rising ninth graders. The next year we would have another cohort, so we'd have 9th and 10th graders and so on, moving up to see this grow into 250 kids across the campus in 4 years. First generation college students in the academic middle, thriving in a small learning environment, really creative, independent, curious, risk takers, folks who might say, this whole traditional idea of high school, it's never sort of seemed right to me. I'm looking for something different and this might be it. However, it's going to be demanding coursework. So someone who's serious about their academics and serious about developing the relationships that are going to help them push through. So we think there are 30 out there at least in our schools in 8th grade right now.
And I'd like to add one other thing. I love the focus on those students that are potentially first-generation college students. We're in the college search process right now with my daughter, who's a senior. And with the change in college funding and need-based tuition, there's a band of the best colleges and universities in the country that pretty much automatically give first-generation college students a full ride, including spending money. And the money for extracurriculars and the money to do study abroad. And so the more we can do to enable these kids to get to that step, there's opportunities there that aren't available to other students. And I think this is a really great way to push them to that door that's going to open for them.
Right, and make them believe that they should charge through that door. So the AVID video, you're really going to love it. It's about 2 minutes long, and it really kind of captures that idea. So what's unique is the small cohort experience. It's not just about accumulating credits. It's about college-mindedness, and that's going to be a conversation we're constantly having. Are these college-minded decisions that you're making? How far are you from that true belief that you are the next college student? Incorporating the feel of both college and high school, so you get some of those traditional experiences and some of the safety net of high school, while also pushing into the college rigor and putting yourself out there. So high levels of individualized support. The AVID elective makes it unique. And then an early college, for example, is about that accumulation of credits, maybe towards the generalized associates. We like the idea that you're getting a lot of different kind of experiences with the College Center. And we think that puts kids in a better positioned place to kind of come at things from several different angles and say, yeah, I'm an AP student, I'm a dual enrollment student, I'm a high school student, I'm a cohort member, I'm a friend, I'm a student, I'm a teacher, So we think this looks at some possible startup commitments from a College Center. We want a real point of contact, someone who has the expertise to go recruit and work with counselors at all of our middle schools to find the students. We want someone who knows how to put schedules together and collaborate. We want someone who does the hard work of collaborating with teachers with students who haven't necessarily been in high rigor courses before and start to question themselves and how to support that. But when you add it all up, it's really about a position and a half or so, or just some tweaks to the schedule. So the startup costs are pretty affordable. AVID membership is up to $15 for the first year, but that gives you a bunch of library resources and training that are not required in years following that. So with a district partnership, that becomes more affordable with the more schools that join in. So these power skills are on our left. It's a part of who our students are. I'm going to disengage during the video because it kind of gets me every time. It's about 2 minutes, but it really does capture who our kids are, and I think Josh is going to start it for us.
People like me.
People like me.
People like me.
People like me don't go to college.
Nobody's ever gonna convince me that I'm gonna be somebody someday.
Street cred, it's more valuable to me than my education.
My life will be defined by those who doubt me.
I know there are some out there looking up to me.
I'll let those AP and honors students be future leaders and policymakers.
Because me, I'm just one out of a long line of statistics.
Who knows, maybe I'll even study.
But it won't affect how my life is going to turn out.
People tell me I can't succeed because they can't see past my skin color or how I talk.
They say I don't care enough to be a first-generation college student.
I am the last person in my family that's going to be successful. I'm aware of the skills and talents I possess.
This is my destiny.
That was me before Albert helped me see my potential, believe in myself, and turn all of that around. And now?
This is my destiny. I am aware of the skills and talents I possess to be successful.
I am the last person in my family that's ever going to be a first-generation college student.
I don't care enough, they say, because they can't see past my skin color or how I talk.
People tell me I can't succeed, but it won't affect how my life is going to turn out. Who knows? Maybe I'll even study statistics.
Because me, I'm just one out of a long line of future leaders and policymakers.
I'll let those AP and honor students be looking up to me.
I know there are some out there, those who doubt me. My life will be defined by my education.
It's more valuable to me than street cred.
I'm gonna be somebody someday.
Nobody's ever gonna convince me that people like me don't go to college.
So I think that kind of gets at why we're working towards this. It gets at who our students are and who our partners are and what they're about. We've got Jacob Nelson, who is the right principal for this, at the right school at the right time. And I'm happy to field any questions. And with your charge, we will start really planning and getting this off the ground and start talking and finding our kids.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Poole?
I have a question. You said that y'all were looking for someone to go out and recruit students. What kind of criteria will they have to meet to be accepted?
So right now, we're definitely not looking for just those students who have been GT gifted identified when they're in the 3rd grade to start out, and we're going to kind of really see what this means. I've been looking at students who are meeting grade level for several years in a row, so they're performing at a reading and writing and math level, at least on grade level. That doesn't necessarily mean they've been bumped up above grade level. If you're reading and writing at grade level, then you should be able to progress through our system through 12 years into college. So that gets us at about 700 kids or so in the 8th grade right now across all the systems. From there, I would say that other schools and school systems that we've seen, they look for things like factors. We do this for full day pre-K, so you look at factors like maybe pupils in poverty, or you look at first generation college, and there's a lot of different districts that have established some criteria. I think we can take the best of all of those to find who our target kid is. It's also a lot to ask a kid to say, there are some sacrifices, not a lot, but that choice. So I want to find 30 kids that want it. I'm hoping I have 70 that want it, and I have to figure out how to weed it out. But if a student's kind of already on this path, then maybe there are some students that need this more than somebody else. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the academic middle is is at grade level, because they're going to be dumped into some pretty rigorous stuff right off the bat with the social, emotional, and the academic supports there. But at least functioning at grade level, we think they will be able to get the ACT and SAT scores to get into the dual enrollment by the junior year.
Okay. Will there be an application process?
There will be. Right now we have 5 or 6 different models that partners use, and with y'all's blessing, we'll start kind of coming up with ours. I know that some of the criteria that we use for the full day pre-K kind of works for us, and we end up, I don't live in elementary world or pre-K world, but you know, we group kids about kind of where they're meeting criteria, and then there's some random selection within those categories. But there will be an application process, and you know, we'll kind of see. I hope we have more interest than we can sustain, and then we can grow it from there.
Okay. You also had bus driver on there as a position. What would that be for?
Well, I don't want transportation to be a barrier for anyone who wants to go to the center at Gilbert, and it is a full day experience. I put that on there not knowing the details of what Mr. Kurtz can work out in terms of creatively moving people. We move people to our centers now, so it's there as a, we need to think about this, but I know Mr. Kurtz is really creative about how he does that. I don't know if it would require a bus driver, but I didn't want to not include it as something that might need to be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments, board? Well, I think it's exciting. So thank you, Mr. Poole, and thank you, Mr. Nelson. We're excited. And Dr. Talley, I know this has been her dream for a long time too. So we appreciate that, and we look forward to hearing more. Dr. Little?
It's an exciting time. That's going to be really neat. Thank you, Mr. Poole. Thank you very much for all the work to make this happen. And we've got a pretty truncated timeline at this point, but we're gonna make it happen. All right. I believe Mr. Caldwell, you're up next on our list, sir.
Yes, sir. I don't really have a great segue, but we will. At the beginning of the school year, we had I guess maybe an overabundance of bed bug introductions in some of our schools, and that led to a request that we do some research, and I need to start off this presentation with an apology to Amy Wood, our Director of Nursing and Health Services. Not only is she a part of the presentation, and I left her off the agenda, she has been instrumental in this research and really does the day-to-day work, so I do apologize for not giving you that credit. For that, so thank you for that. I want to start off by just saying, according to the EPA, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, a school is not an ideal place for bed bugs, but it is an ideal hub as they travel, because they tend to, as we say, hitch rides on students from their homes to the schools. It's not really an ideal place for them to flourish because there's not a steady blood host, if you will, to feed. But we do recognize the fact that there are bed bug introductions, not only, and it's not relegated to one particular geographic area. We've had, as of last Thursday, I think we've had 10 introductions at 10 different sites, I should say, maybe more than 10 introductions, but there's been at least 10 schools affected all across the district and in just about every geographic region. So it's not just one particular area or one particular school. But again, at the beginning of this school year, there were multiple bed bugs introductions, particularly at one or two schools. And so that request was made for the procedures, a review of our current procedures, and that's what we've done, and that's what I want to report on tonight. We began by looking at information from 10 total school districts, Lexington 1 being one of those, and then 9 others, and then several respected bed bug authorities. I didn't make that term up. That's what they call themselves. We talked to, or didn't talk to, but we researched several universities, University of Minnesota, the state of Michigan, Virginia Tech, the New York State Department of Education has its own pest management unit in the Department of Education. So there's lots of protocols and procedures that New York City has in place. There's even a Central Ohio Bed Bug Task Force. Who knew? So this is certainly not a situation that's Lexington 1 or a South Carolina problem. It is nationwide, and in looking at all those research, all those other authorities, what we wanted to find out is what are they doing that we're not doing? What are we doing that's good, and what can we do to improve our procedures to make this an even better tool to use for the bed bugs? The strengths of our procedures, well, we have procedures. And that sounds like a flippant comment to make, but I say that because as we researched local districts, several of them have no procedures at all. And when we talked to them, they said, you know, we kind of just do this case by case, but with you calling and asking us about this, maybe we need to get some procedures in place. I'll also say that when we looked at many of the procedures that other districts do have in place, they look very familiar because they've borrowed ours that we've had in place since 2013 and call them their own. Another a strength of our procedures is we have 4 social workers that work tirelessly with this effort. So we collaborate with them a lot, and they do a lot of the behind-the-scenes work, going to the homes, if need be, offering resources that families may not have that will help them if they have an infestation or have an issue in their home. And the third bullet, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and as I alluded to earlier, not only is she instrumental in this presentation, but her school nurses really take the lead on these issues when there are introductions in the school. So I'm going to have her speak to that at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. So school nurses, oh, come on.
She asked if she'd have to stand up.
I
said
did.
no.
I specifically asked if I could. Can I stand over here because I kind of move around a lot? Okay, thanks. So school nurses are really they provide the structure for the procedures. And they do that primarily by knowing the procedures, knowing where they're located, and being able to communicate what needs to happen. Before we do anything with our procedures, the thing that's really the linchpin is a positive identification, because we, believe it or not, have had times where people thought a bed bug was found on someone and we had it analyzed and it was carpet fibers. And so we don't want to start this process unless we know absolutely for certain that it is a bed bug. So knowing that the specimen is going to come to the nurse to make sure that there's a positive identification, that's where the nurse really gets started. The nurses have access to an EPA training. They access all the time, and they are encouraged to kind of go back and review that from time to time. That helps them with identification. If they are uncomfortable or if they don't feel like they have a good enough specimen, then we have other options for them. They can contact me and I can kind of take a second look at it, or I can either pick up the specimen and take it to the Clemson Extension so that they can identify it, or we can send pictures of it to the state entomologist at DHEC. And we've done both of those on numerous occasions. Actually, Clemson Extension is where we found that we had carpet fibers and not a bed bug. So we base everything on a positive specimen identification. So let's just say that in Miss Smith's 3rd grade class, a positive specimen is identified on a student's book bag. If I am the nurse at that school, I will arrange to have the student brought down to the health room discreetly with their belongings. I will assess the student's clothing and the belongings, so book bags, coats, everything like that, to see if there's any further evidence of bed bugs on the student or his or her belongings. At that point, we will call the parent and let the parent know what we have found, because even though we know that finding a bed bug on someone is suggestive of a bed bug issue in their home, it is not proof. And so we want to call the parent and let the parent know what we have found. And then as the nurse, I will do a very simple but very effective screening. and I will ask three main questions. Are you able to have a licensed professional pest management company come and evaluate your home? Do you have a dryer in your home available to you to use? And do you have either plastic resealable bags or some kind of plastic bins that you can put your family's belongings into during this process? Those three key questions help the nurse determine what steps need to be taken. If a family says that they cannot have they're not in a position to have a pest control company come out, then we refer them to our social workers, and the social workers help with that. If they say that they can do that, but maybe they don't have a dryer in their home, we actually will allow them to send clothing to us every day. We will put the clothes that they came in the dryer on high for 30 minutes to heat treat their belongings, put them in a different pair of clothing, and we will keep that extra pair so that every day we can have them wearing their clothes. We can just heat treat as they come in. We will take the new pair of clothing off, put the old one on that we've already heat treated, and send them back to class.
How many days or months do you do that, Ms. Woods?
Typically not very long, because we do maintain contact with the families throughout the treatment process. And so when we know that they've gotten to a point where treatment was successful, then we discontinue that. But we have had some students that we've had to do that for extended periods of time, and it's just the situation that it is, and we do that so that we can minimize introductions in the future. So then we also will offer, if they are unable to do any of that, we will actually even offer to let them use our dryer at school if they would like to bring in maybe a week's worth of clothes at a time for their child. Dry them on high, heat treat them at school, and then we will arrange, if they don't have bins or plastic bags, we will arrange for them to get those so that they can keep the heat treated clothing in those bags and just pull from it every day to send the student to school. So those three very simple questions really tell us a lot about what we're going to need to do to help this family. And then after that, once we've made a positive identification and we know the student and it's on their belongings, we then communicate with the teacher. And we let the teacher know that we're going to provide, we as in the school, we're going to provide resealable plastic bags for every student in that class, because we want them all to put their belongings in the resealable plastic bag when they get to school. We want them to only take out what they need when they need it, reseal it, and at the end of the day, take all of their belongings out, reseal it again, so that the nurse can, or someone, maybe the health room assistant can go through and inspect the bags to make sure that there's nothing in there, and then the kids go home at the end of the day. And then we also, once we initiate the bagging process, we send letters home to parents to let them know that we are bagging their students' belongings and why, and to give them a little bit of information on bed bugs. And so throughout all of that, the nurse maintains contact with the family to try and make sure that if they've, if they said, yes, we can have somebody come out and we'll arrange to do that, we follow up with them and say, hey, just wanted to check in and see, what the verdict was. Sometimes they tell us, yeah, they checked everything and they couldn't find anything. Okay. That happens sometimes.
Ms. Woods, how long do you bag the belongings? How do you do that for a couple weeks, a month?
That also depends on how the feedback from the family goes. We've done it for some. It's been a very quick thing in 2 weeks, and we're done. For others, because it was such an ongoing thing, it may have been a month. But like I said, throughout all of this, the nurse is maintaining that contact with the family to see if they need additional resources, if there's anything else that we can do, and if there are future introductions, then we kind of take it a step further and start making a plan with the family to definitely have them send in some clothes so that we can make sure they're being heat treated every morning and the student can change into them and go back to class.
Thank you. I think it's worth pointing out that that the communication that we have with the parents as a part of our procedures is something that other districts and other agencies don't recommend. In fact, the CDC and the EPA recommend that you only notify the parents when there's an infestation in the school or in the classroom. We take that a step further to every time we possibly can notify the parents, we do that. Certainly, we talk to the parents of the student who brought the introduction, if that can be determined. But we go a step further and let the entire class know whenever possible. So the recommendations we have for our existing procedures is we currently have a coordinator of custodial services. And I've talked to Mr. Salters and gotten his blessing on this. He also is our pest control liaison for the district. So we want to provide, there's actual bed bug training that talks about introductions and treatments and infestations and those type things. So we're recommending that he receive this training and then he be the consult for the district. Each time there's an introduction in the school, then he can be contacted by the school and given the specifics of the introduction and decide if he needs to inspect, if we need to do a treatment of those kind of things. So we'll have a bed bug expert, if you will, on site, and that can do a face-to-face inspection or can recommend particular treatments or other things that need to be done. We do send home educational materials with parents when we send those letters home, but there's some other information from the EPA and the CDC and other places that we want to send home that further supports the parents and their treatment if they have issues at home. And as I said earlier, we involve our social workers with this, but we want to involve them earlier in the process. We typically involve them at the end of that screening if we realize that the parents don't have resources to treat. But we want to include them at the beginning of this because they may be aware of a family situation. They may be aware of where students are doubling up and that they may have been displaced in families living with other families, so that we realize that we're not dealing with just an isolated incident with an isolated student. It may really impact several sets of students. So we want to get those folks involved at the very beginning. Other things that we thought about, we had a tremendous amount of conversation about school buses and what to do about the possibility of bed bugs on school buses. As we researched this, our data doesn't indicate that a school bus is a good source of transmission of bed bugs. And I say that because if we had an elementary student that had an introduction and we believed it be because of a school bus, then logic would tell me that we would probably have a middle or a high school with that same problem. That just doesn't bear out. We do see many instances where we do have, say, an introduction in the elementary school and one in the middle school, but we can almost always tie it back to some kind of connection that they're brothers and sisters or they're living together or that sort of thing. So, just the actual thinking that they're being transmitted, hitching rides from student to student on the school bus, our data is just not bearing that out at this point. The next consideration, and we probably talked most about this than anything else because it was suggested and recommended several times throughout the past few months from other folks, but nowhere that we looked did anyone ever come close to saying that you should exclude students from school. In fact, they were adamant, and when I say they, I'm talking about the bed bug experts and the other districts that we looked at. They use words like dignity, respect, discretion, empathy, warned us against stigmatizing the students from this. So instead of excluding the students, and the reality of that, if we excluded a student who had a bed bug infestation in their home, how long are we going to keep them out of school? And so if the home's not being treated, so the opposite of that is the standard operating procedure, and certainly all does mean all, and we want to have our students in school with us as much as possible. So again,
I think the hardest thing too is how do you prove that one student
that's right.
is infested? I mean, you don't know where that bed bug came from, so you're going to stigmatize a child that that's the part that I struggle with.
That's right. Well,
I think in an email, Mr. Caldwell, you had said in all instances except one, you were able to pinpoint the student?
At one point I said that, that's right.
Yes, okay.
I think of the instances that we had this school year.
Right.
Yeah. Is there a follow-up to that, or?
No, I was just saying that you can actually pinpoint the student.
Just
Yeah, I
about
thought
every time.
that's what I
And
had
and we do have situations where it's on a carpet in a classroom, and we don't know which student it came from, or it may be in the hallway or some other common area, but.
To pinpoint the student to not allow them to come to school?
No, I think Cindy was saying that we don't know where the bed bugs are coming from. But I remember reading an email from Mr. Caldwell where he says, in all instances except one, they were able to figure out which child the bed bugs came in on.
But I mean, I think that, and I really appreciate Ms. Woods and Mr. Caldwell, the sensitivity that is in a part of this policy, and the fact that you're using this as an opportunity to mentor families and help them overcome this problem. Because, I mean, an 8-year-old wouldn't know why they couldn't come to school, because they just wouldn't understand that. And bed bugs are not a behavior issue. And so I think the way the policy and the way your procedures that you have in place are appropriate. And really, I think it fits in the mission to put student success and well-being first.
Well,
and so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for that. And there is a social stigma attached to this, unfortunately, but it has nothing to do with cleanliness. It has nothing to do with wealth or poverty. I will say that in some areas, some parents may be better able to treat themselves, and in other situations, maybe they're not. Well, that's where we step in, and that's why I want to get the social worker involved on the front end instead of the back end of that. So,
Mr. Caldwell, could I just make a
absolutely.
point? Even though we can say that we are able to pinpoint or someone that a bed bug came off of, that still does not indicate that they have an infestation in their home. It may have been picked up from someone else. That is always the possibility when we see it on someone, which is why we inspect the rest of their belongings, we inspect their clothing, we call the family. And we have several times seen a bed bug on a student, and the family had the pest control company come out and they did not find anything in that home. So just because we say that we can, it was found on a student, that still doesn't necessarily mean that that particular student is where, their home is where the infestation lies.
Correct. I was just correcting that we were unable to determine what student the bed bug came from, because I know I had read, and if I had known we were discussing this, I would have, printed the emails and brought the notes and whatever. But I knew at one point in time, Mr. Caldwell had told us that we could pinpoint the student.
I can tell you in multiple years of pediatric practice that nothing strikes fear in the heart of a mama than the use of the word bedbug, lice, or scabies. It creates such a visceral response. And what I can tell you is that neither three of those organisms care about your retirement plan. They don't care about your socioeconomic status. They don't care what type of threshold you have at your door. They will cross it, period. And so I think there's always a very important phrase to remember. A bed bug does not an epidemic make. A lice does not an epidemic make. A scabies does not an epidemic make. So it can be really hard to kind of tamp down some of those emotional feelings that you get because there are people in here scratching their head right now. Because I use the word lice, there are people who are having that emotional hives-like response, and if you really want to reach up there and scratch your head right now. And it is really tough. And I think of all of my reading, everything from the EPA to the CDC to any of your schools, the interruption of education is a last resort. And I think that's clearly identified in just about all of the authorities, if you will. And I think it makes sense because it is not an epidemic when you have one. It's called an epidemic for a reason. We just can't have that emotional response to say, oh my gosh, everybody has scabies or everybody has bed bugs. It's not the case. So.
Well, I'm going to jump on Dr. Guyton here and Ms. Woods. They're not life-threatening, correct?
Yes, correct. So you can certainly have some very rare types of transmittals. In my years of practice, I have never seen one. If anything, I have seen a rash or I have seen, you know, more or less of anything, a nuisance, if you will. I remember we had sand delivered to our house one time to sand the yard, and we ended up getting fleas in the house. Holy cow. I mean, that was a visceral response for me. I was ready to burn down the house. And so it is more of a nuisance. It's less of a truly significant medical concern, but it does need to be addressed. You know, by no means do we want to underscore anything. It does need to be addressed. But as far as extensiveness of disease, no, we typically don't see it. I think you can attest to that, Amy. I mean,
Well, and to that point, DHEC, the agency, and I'm reading this from their website, responsible for, quote, promoting and protecting the health of the public in South Carolina, no longer addresses bed bugs at all. I made an inadvertent comment earlier in the year thinking that they still did, but they don't address it at all. Yes or no? That's not. We actually, Dr. Little and I met with a representative from DHEC, and that is just not something that they are undertaking at this point. I think because of the nuisance factor versus the health aspect of it. So for board policy considerations, because one of the questions that arose during this research is, do we need a board policy? We currently have procedures. We are recommending no board policy for a couple of reasons. First of all, there is no legal requirement or regulation, such as an exclusion from DHEC. To do that, and lots of times board policies are written because they're state regulations or state laws, but I don't really want to hide behind that point as much as I do our procedures that we have and that we are going to edit. And for example, we've edited them in 2014 and in 2017, and again now in 2019, gives us flexibility much easier than it would with a board policy. If we had our procedures written into a policy and a best practice changed, or there was some other type of treatment or anything changed, it would be a 2-month process before we could make that change because of the way that we're mandated to change board policy. We think we have very clearly articulated procedures that have been borrowed by many of our neighboring districts already. We can change them at a moment's notice. So if something changed tomorrow, we can change our procedures tomorrow versus having to wait a couple of months to do that. So we're not recommending a board policy for that very reason. Our procedures, we think, are very thorough and complete and open to that flexibility that the board policy would not allow us to have. That is our presentation, and I will answer any questions you may have.
I think, and you said, you probably said this, you met with a parent advisory group from parents from all over the district about this and talked about it? Was it a group of like PTO presidents or teachers? I don't know. I thought you met with somebody.
Well, that was for the
Was that
for the
vaping?
vaping, but we had a
That was
presentation.
vaping.
We had, in fact, we met with the parent advisory 2 months in a row.
Okay.
A few weeks ago and the month prior to discuss this.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. I think you or Ms. Wood said if they couldn't afford the treatment, they would be referred to a social worker. How do they, who pays for that, I guess is the question. If they can't afford it and then they get referred out?
Well, we do have some resources that are being made available to us that we can use in situations where the parents absolutely can't afford that.
Okay. And, okay, let's see here. Okay, it says, we will let teachers know that we are providing resealable bags, only take out what you need. Then the letter goes home to the parents. Now, but the things come out of the bags at the end of the day. And so when the kids get on the school bus, and I know you said that they're not hitching rides or data's not bearing this out. Mm-hmm. How did you gather data about if there's bed bugs on the school bus?
Well, I looked for trend data. Did I have an elementary kid on a particular bus that had an introduction and was a subsequent middle or high school? And it's just not, when that did happen, it was almost, well, I say almost always, I think it was always, I could tie it to, it was the same family or there were two families that were living together. It wasn't, I had no reason to believe that a bed bug from a bus got on another student and went to their school.
So what's the reporting procedure for school bus drivers?
The reporting procedure?
Yeah, because, I mean, I've gotten calls from bus drivers saying, oh my God, there's bed bugs on the bus, what do we do? Or how do I get rid of these things? But never have they said like, they called me and I told them, go get to some diatomaceous earth and fill every nook and cranny you can.
So they would need to contact one of the nurses at one of the schools that they go to, because the nurse would need to identify it.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think they know that.
We'll be
there's
sure that
anything
they
can
do.
Okay. Now, and these procedures you have outlined, where can those be found?
They actually are on the Google Drive that the nurses use, so all of the nurses have access to them, because it starts with the nurse. And so that's why the nurses are the ones that have access to all of the procedures.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, so as is often the case, we will have Mr. Salters give us a operations update later in the evening. But there's a lot of exciting things happening, and we're going to see some, I think, some neat pictures today. Hopefully.
Dr. Little, while they're getting that up, let's thank Ms. Woods and Mr. Caldwell, because that's a lot. They've been
A lot of work.
working on. And the other nurses. You make sure we said thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Board. Tonight I'm going to send you, or show you some pictures of the construction we've got going on. Centerville Elementary School, we'll start there. Recall this school open in this coming August, and so really pleased to see some more walls coming up here. We've got cafeteria area here, classroom wing here. We've got steel and decking on. They're prepping that for roofing material now. And so we're kind of, you can see the staging going around the building. We started here, over here, and then here, and this slab will be poured hopefully later this week, weather permitting. And the good news is obviously with this site we can make good progress even a day or so after rain with nice sandy soil. So, and just recall, to orient you, this is Highway 1 right out here, and this is Rice Drive right here, a dirt road off of Highway 1. So the front of the school will be facing Highway 1. You can actually see kind of the entrance driveway taking shape right there as you come around. This is a shot from the back of the school looking out at Highway 1. This is, again, a prototype plan of the first time it was built was at Rocky Creek, and then several other times that we've gone through this plan. So looking forward to seeing some more progress here and getting that school open on time. Moving on to Pillion. And as you look at these pictures, I just, flash back. This school actually started a little before Pillion Middle School. And Pillion Middle School, I think they've actually been working now 95 days, and I think they may have had like 2 rain days at that site. This is an overall photo. Again, this is a prototype of Beechwood Middle School. And as you recall, the classroom wings are here on the left, and cafeteria, kitchen area, and then your main office administration area, learning commons. And then in this plan, the auditorium is here and around the band orchestra rooms, and then the gymnasium is here on the front. So those two are flipped. At Beechwood, it's the other way. And again, you can see significant progress here. The first classroom wing, the roof deck is on. Second classroom wing, they'll be setting steel this week. Steel is being set on the cafeteria in the back, and the third classroom wing will be up to steel bearing height within a week or so. So really making significant progress on this site, and we're very pleased with that. And then they'll be pouring the footing, the slabs over here, and clearing out. Actually, this theater area is already being excavated so that you create the slope down to the stage area. That was being done last week. So real excited about that progress. Yes, sir.
So I was at a function this weekend. One of the teachers at Beechwood stopped and complimented me, and of course I had nothing to do with it. Yeah, but I want to thank you and the board members that were on the architectural review. But he talked about how the layout and how the students are funneled just leads to less disruption, less fights, less conflict. Essentially, they can focus on instruction. And he said, I never thought about architecture allowing instruction, but I see it in play at Beechwood. So.
Yeah. That's
Anyhow,
great feedback.
So thank you all board members that were involved with that.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for sharing that. That's great feedback. Moving on to one of our newer projects, excited to show you some things going on in Pillion at Pillion High School. As you recall, one of the things we're doing there is Pillion High School is without an 8-lane track, and so we are expanding that. They actually really couldn't host a lot of activities like track meets and so forth that they wanted to. Of course, we just recognize Mr. Beatonbow as Hall of Fame track coach, and he's been doing it on a 6-lane track for many, many years. So we're excited about that. And also, we had a little conversation before. This was the track building, concession building that was very outdated. Had a number of problems with the restrooms. There really wasn't adequate changing facilities for the student athletes. So we're excited about bringing new facilities there. I thought he was about in tears. He was so excited about seeing this building go down. So and the new building coming up. So looking forward to that. Again, just some more progress there. And if you're familiar with this layout, of course, Pillion Middle School and the Performing Arts Center is right here. There'll be a new entry created, a new locker room space for male and female athletes, concession area, and some storage here, and then a nice entry plaza that will mirror what we have over at softball and the baseball facility that was done previously. Again, that kind of gives you a better orientation. That's the Performing Arts Center there in the background at the backside of Pillion Middle School. We've also been doing a lot of work with our Future Ready classrooms. Our procurement office has been very busy helping move on some of our older furniture, and along with Matt Warren. And you can see the fruits of that labor. This is the new furniture and new design of our classrooms in several of our schools. And just to highlight again, Saxcotha, White Knoll Elementary, and Pillion Elementary. Really appreciate those principals and teachers' support as we work through this process, and doing this during the during the middle of the school year. We basically, furniture folks get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they take classrooms down and put classrooms up, and do it at the end of the day as well. So it's pretty exciting for them and the students to see this transformation. And you can see a lot of the different configurations that you will see across all of the schools as we continue to roll out this model of new furniture. So very excited about that happening. One of the collaboration stations, as you recall, those are going in each of our classrooms, and students can get together with their devices and sit around and connect to that TV and work on projects together and collaborate. So. And then I just want to take a minute. We're about a year into our facilities program, so I want to give you kind of a high-level update. You're not going to be able to read this, but this is a program schedule of all of our projects scheduled out by school, and what you see is basically a design phase in green, a contract negotiation phase in yellow, and then a construction phase in purple or blue, whatever you want to call that. And you see the red line there. We're about a quarter of the way through, or maybe 20% of the way through our program. And so I just want to highlight to you that we are on schedule with our projects. And this schedule that was laid out was really a guideline. It was a way to stage our projects based on needs, but yet also work with the cash flow of referendum, bond sales, and so forth. So you may see some time frames, move here and there, and those occur because of program changes, or it may be, as an example, elementary school number 18. Obviously, we're still looking for land for that site, and so that that is going to slip a little bit in the schedule. But again, these are just kind of guidelines as we laid out the overall program. So it was really a draft of what we were looking at. Ms. Green?
Yeah, Mr. Salters, I was going to ask you, there was an article in the paper last week, about one of our neighboring districts, Richland 2, and they passed a pretty sizable bond at the same time we did. And the article was talking about how pretty much none of their bond dollars have been spent yet. And I was reading the article, and I was just kind of astounded because, I mean, as your slides just showed, we have 2 schools completely out of the ground at the same time frame. What do you attribute our faster progress?
Well, I appreciate that softball question. I think I would attribute that to great leadership of the board and your vision to. Well, it's true because you put together a really a good process for selecting the right contractors, the right architectural firms. You also did a prototype model with your the new facilities, new school facilities. You would not see those. You wouldn't see dirt being turned on those 2 schools yet if we had to design them starting when the referendum passed. And you can see realistically, we're going to be in those schools, within a year and a half. So really, the way that the program has been structured has allowed a lot of this work to get done on a really good schedule. What that also has done, as you recall, in our bond sale recently, we got a $15 million premium on that bond sale. And that was because we were able to pull some of the project funding forward so that we could, because the projects are getting ready, and the original outlay was, kind of stretched out a little bit further. And by pulling those forward, we did a bigger bond sale at one time. And that's a $15 million amount of money that was not programmed anywhere, wasn't counted for. So that's a really big benefit. But I'll just show you, of course, this is the rest of the projects, if you will, as we go through. But I have here just an update of where we are to date. And so we have, $32.5 million in project expenditures to date, and then we've encumbered another $84.7 million. So for a total of about $117 million that we've encumbered or spent to date. So we're well on our way to getting this work out to our schools. One of the things that I believe is really important with that is the need. It's been 10 years since we did a referendum. And so the needs were great before we did the referendum, and the longer we wait, the longer our students and staff have to wait, and our community has to wait for the benefits of these improvements. But also, with every year you wait, costs go up. And so the sooner you can get projects done, typically, historically, the cheaper those projects come in. And so it's a real benefit to be ready from the ground up.
Well, and I can actually throw a little congratulations your way. I was able to praise your department. So several weeks ago, I was at an event and I was talking to a board member from Lexington 5, and he was kind of lamenting their construction project that they have right now, the Amex Ferry Elementary School that has been in the news, and their process on that started prior to our bond referendum, and they don't even have a shovel of dirt turned yet. And he was asking how we were able to be so far ahead on our projects and get them going. I mean, they're still, I think, in the design phase maybe on theirs. And I said, well, actually, it's a credit to our operations staff and the expertise that we have and the relationships that we have with contractors and the experience we have. So I think, I mean, you credit the board with the leadership, and we appreciate that, but I think a lot of the credit goes to your department and just the way that you have managed this thus far and for many, many years, so.
Well, I do appreciate that. We are very fortunate to have a lot of experience doing this kind of work, so that does help. If you built one school every 10 or 15 years, it would be a little more challenging for sure. So thank you for that. And just, as a reminder, as I wrap up, the building plan progress, all of our projects are tracked on our website, thanks to our support from our communications team. And so you can go to that link, and we have photos that we keep current on that site for your use. So be happy to answer any other questions you have.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Stacy is going to talk about animals in schools for I think just a brief moment.
Just a brief moment. Just to let you know, this past spring and even early into the fall, we've had several situations that have involved animals in schools, and like maybe we didn't even know they were there. And so we realized as a district that we really need to have a policy related to animals on school grounds. When I looked at our board policies, there was only one policy that mentioned animals, and that was you couldn't take an animal on a school bus. And so we formed a committee of the following employees: Holly Sullivan, who's our coordinator for science, Tracy Pender, who's our director for school counseling, Ann O'Kane, the coordinator for section 504, Wendy Balo, the director of special ed, Meredith Siebert, who works in human resources, and Devonna Price, the director of human resources. And the purpose of the committee was really to just determine the basic structure for animals on school property. We started looking at the school board model policy, and the school board model policy was an I policy, which is instruction, but it really addressed only service animals and primarily their use in an instructional setting. And we felt that we really need to separate out the different conditions in which we would allow animals on school grounds. So next month, I'm going to bring to you a proposed policy for the use of animals in schools for instructional purposes, and it'll include a draft of internal procedures outlining the approval process. Those procedures would include steps such as identifying curriculum standards, caretaking plans, advance notification to parents and students for health-related reasons, and safety procedures. And then in addition, what we plan to do is then look at the need for policies to address service and emotional support animals in the school setting. And so in January, we plan to present to you 3 other policies. One, student use of animals in schools, which would be a J policy, employee use of animals in schools, which would be a G policy, and then visitor use of animals in schools, which would be a K policy. One reason, to think about it, there is an instructional need, but then we also have to look at the service animal and emotional support need. And so a live animal would be approved because it's a standards-based curriculum, and it could be twofold. It could be short-term. We have these organizations that bring animals into the school, like you can read to a dog, or I think Healing Species comes in and helps kids get through some emotional trauma. So that would be a short-term use. The long-term would be an animal that stays in there for, say, the duration of a unit. We've hatched eggs and baby chickens and that kind of stuff. The husbandry program at LTC. And so that would be one part. And then the service and emotional support, we just need to make sure that we follow all the applicable federal laws. Title II, which is public accessibility, and then Section 504 and ADA. So that's just something for you to look forward to. If you have questions or things that you know need to be included in that policy, if you let me know, we'll make sure that when we bring that first reading to you in December, we got it covered.
Well, thank you. We went on a school tour last month, and we had a teacher ask us about this, and I appreciate y'all being so responsive to her request. So thank you.
Thank you. Interestingly, we have seen a significant rise in our request in our office for medical necessity of emotional support animals and those kind of things. So it's definitely a groundswell that we're seeing. The ADA standards are pretty cut and dry on the differentiation between emotional support and a service animal and the various roles. And so we're honestly still trying to figure it out ourselves as to what that process looks like. So it's definitely, we're seeing more of this. So,
All right, thank you.
We have a guinea pig I'd be happy to loan to a classroom.
I got a beagle, but
and it has fleas.
All right, thank you very much about animals in classroom. I look forward to another spirited conversation about that.